3, 2, 1.
Well, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the very first official episode of the Metaverse Church podcast. I am Stuart, and in the Metaverse world, people know me as Stunami. Don't ask me where they came from. I have no idea. But Stunami is what I go by. So if you ever find yourself in the Metaverse and you come across a dude by the name of Stunami, that is me. And with me is Goose. Goose, say what's up.
Hey, what's up? Good to be here.
Perfect. I would have expected anything less than what I asked you to say. What's up? So we're venturing into this podcasting adventure. So really the heartbeat behind all this, like the why behind it, is Goose and I both. We are pastors of churches in virtual reality. Goose more than just VR, but I am particularly in VR. But because of that, our paths crossed ways, and we have become friends due to that, which has been awesome. And I don't know, just one day, I guess really what happened was I invited Goose to come on to my other podcast, Stu on this podcast, to talk about Metaverse stuff. And I think probably, 2 months after that, I was just sitting there just talking to other churches who are looking to get into VR and other organizations that are looking to get into VR. And ultimately, I just reached out to Goose one day and I said, hey, do you want to just do a podcast with me? And let's just get information out there, because I think this thing's here to stay. I think that we're very much at the beginning stages of all this. So there's much that I'm still learning. I think that there's still much to learn. There's probably going to end up being somebody who hops into this game that does it way better than we are right now. And by way better, I mean in the church realm of Metaverse. And if somebody comes in and they do it better than either Goose or I are doing it or anybody else, dude, praise the Lord. That's fantastic. But we're here just to talk about something that we're passionate about right now, something that, I guess we're the experts on at this point. take that for what it's worth.
That's a scary thought.
Dude, it really is. But man, it might be fun conversations. It might be serious conversations. But either way, it's a conversation about the Metaverse. So all that being said, Goose, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, man, you summed up the Metaverse. I mean, it sums up a weekend in the Metaverse, right? You'd be having a fun conversation 1 minute and then talking to somebody about something very, very serious the next. And that's just the nature of it. I'm excited to talk about it. Yeah, I mean, for the benefit of other people in ministry, but just so that people can understand what it actually is. Because we've been in it for a while now, and it's normalized for us. Like, I mean, I'll say things just not thinking how weird it sounds to someone that has never been in it. And the looks I still get from people that are just like, they're like, what are you talking about? That sounds like insanity. And in a lot of ways, it is, but it's also incredible. And the thing that I keep coming back to, and I know you know this too, is it's like you just cannot deny what we are seeing. Like, for all the weirdness, for all of the question marks, for all of the where's the theology on this? Are we okay with this? For all of that we were trying to navigate through, man, you cannot deny the changed lives through the work of the Holy Spirit that the Lord is doing what we're doing. And so we just kind of look back at the trail and just be like, look, man, God's working. I guess we got to keep going and still keep figuring this thing out. Because I'm with you, man. It's here to stay. It may look different. It certainly will look different as it evolves, because this is the pregame. I don't know if you feel that way too, but in some ways I feel like we've been doing this forever, and in some ways I'm like, I haven't really got started yet. So yeah, I think it's going to be good. Plus, when you and I get together, man, we can't shut up. So it's better to just record it all, and maybe somebody else can benefit from it. So yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah, sweet. So we'll dive into a little bit about our time in the Metaverse, our experience and whatnot. But this is what I think would be helpful. I think that it'd be good for the audience to hear first who is Stuart and Goose. As man, I keep calling you Goose. I know your real name. I know other people know your real name. I feel like for the purpose of this podcast, I feel like I have to go by Stunami. I really feel like
you,
I have to do that. Like
you,
it makes
whatever you
sense,
feeling,
right?
man. Whatever. I love it. I love it. I don't know that you do though.
I
I
mean,
don't. Well, hang on. I don't know that you do. Here's why. Because Goose did not start as my metaverse name. I have been Goose for over 30 years. I've been Goose before, just actually slightly before the internet was even around. So I'm
okay.
carrying my, the physical world name into the metaverse. So actually, Goose and Stuart, that's actually that's a good analog. But if you want to go by Stunami, you can't. I mean, that's a dope name, man. So
I
let's do
mean,
it.
if you want to make this thing just super delicious, we'll just call it the Goose Stew Podcast.
Did you just figure out the name for our podcast? I think you did.
I just changed it. So
I
thank
think
you for
that's
listening
it.
to the very first episode of the Metaverse Church Podcast.
We're
Here's the first episode of the Goose Stew Podcast. Get ready. We're gonna season up that appetite of yours with some goose stew.
the logo is going to be like a caricature of you with a pot, like a cauldron, and a goose inside of it, right?
Yes. Oh, of course. I'm gonna work up this artwork right now. We got it. We got another podcast on the way. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's take that then as a springboard to just who is Goose? What do we need to know about Goose outside of just the metaverse
Yeah.
pastoral role hat that you wear? Okay, so all that, like, give us an insight to who Goose is. So we know that we're gonna be talking about church world, all that kind of stuff, but who is Goose outside of like metaverse church type stuff?
But it was this crazy intersection of ministry and my what I have been doing for, at that point, about a decade, which is programming and making video games in Unity. And it was one of those moments where, I mean, Jason, we're talking and he said, I'm really looking for is a pastor who knows how to make video games. And he didn't really know a lot about my background. I'm like, okay, that's oddly specific. And so that's sort of the conversation that kind of brings us to where we are today, and metaverse ministry. And so yeah, so that's that. Outside of that, married, 4 kids. We got a dog. I love football, love soccer, love Barcelona. I'm also obsessive about professional darts, something that I will talk about quite often. So and yeah, and so that's another thing. So PDC darts is something that
Okay.
I'm obsessive fan about. I love the game of darts and I love watching it. So, and don't get me started on, yeah, anyway, we'll be talking about that too. So, yeah, love music, play guitar, play drums, like to
So
sing, all that.
so,
Yeah.
so then the show Ted Lasso is like your favorite show ever.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was great. Especially the dart scene. I mean, that scene was just like converged. I
That's the
mean,
reason why.
I mean, it was awesome and also insanely ridiculous for him to check out a 170 just as like a dude from the US that happens to have played some darts. Like that was some Batman level like dart, like that's, you know, like the pros certainly do that. The pros can certainly do it, but and it's when they do it, it raises the roof, man. But like, yeah. Anyway, yeah, that show's great.
That's so funny. My wife and I actually just got done rewatching all or both seasons again. So just the fact that you mentioned your soccer fanhood and then throwing in the darts in there, it's like, well, of course I have to mention Ted Lasso at this point. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's good
um,
stuff.
well, cool, man. Thanks for a little bit of who you are with our audience. I
Yeah.
just find it really interesting just how God will kind of start our journey off one way, and we might have an idea of what we think that's going to look like, and then it just completely turns into something else. So for me, I got into ministry. So I felt called into ministry. Really, if I went way back in when I first felt called, I felt called when I into ministry when I was a sophomore in high school, and so I was sitting in a parent teacher conference, and my teacher says to me in front of my parents, like, "Well, what do you think you're going to be doing for the rest of your life?" I'm like, "I'm a sophomore in high school. I have no clue whatsoever. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll go into ministry." And I said that because I was kind of feeling the nudging towards it, and I had no idea what that meant. They asked, my teacher asked, like, "Well, what do you think that means?" I was like, "I don't know, youth ministry. I have no idea what that means." Like, again, I'm a sophomore. Who knows what I'm going to do with the rest of my life? I don't even know if I'm going to make it through high school. Which that in itself was a miracle. But yeah, so I ultimately got out of high school. I pursued pretty much anything and everything other than ministry. And ultimately, I just found myself in a position where all the stuff that I was trying to do wasn't working. I went to church on an Easter Sunday, and pretty much the moment that I walked into the building and placed my butt in the seat, I just felt God's presence just say, "Hey, you've tried it your way. You ready to try it my way yet?" And I was just like, "Yes, sir. Let's go." So I got back into going to church on a regular basis every week. I got into volunteering with the youth ministry, and I told the high school pastor at the time of that ministry that I was volunteering with, it's like, "Hey, I think I'm going to go to school for this." And he was wise, wise enough to say to me, like, "Hey, if you think that this is something that God's calling you to do, you know what it looks like to do ministry on the front lines, serving with the students, serving as a leader. But why don't you come on as an intern with me and see what it looks like on the back end and see if this is still something that you want to chase down and pursue?" So I took him up on that, fell in love with it. Um, and as I was on my way to school, one of the other mentors that I had in my life working at that church, he says, "So what are you going to go study?" And I said, "Probably youth ministry." And he goes, "You think you're going to be a youth pastor your entire life?" I'm like, "I have no idea." He goes, "I mean, you can study youth ministry if you want. That's great. It's a great field to study." And I kid you not, I went off to school thinking that I was going to go study youth ministry. And as soon as I placed foot on the campus of the school that I was going to, again, I just felt the presence of the Lord just say, "Nope, just study theology." I was like,
Mm,
"Cool, I'll study theology. Why not?" Like, and really the idea behind that too was like, as I processed it, was just like, dude, youth ministry is great and it's definitely a focused area, but theology, that is all
yeah.
generations focused. Like, this is just knowing God and taking what I know of God and just trying to give it back to people and lead them towards Jesus. And fun side note, like, you and I talked about this prior to the recording, that we think that one of the fun things of this is probably going to be the rabbit trails that we take. Fun rabbit trail. So as a person who messes with Unity, you built the world for Lakeland, you built the world for Cornerstones, and I know that you built the VR world for some other churches as well. Try this one on for size for theology. Some theologian's going to hear this and they're going to reach out and just totally wreck me for saying this, and it's fine. But one of the guys that I work with, he and I were just chit-chatting about a month ago, and we started talking about theology. And I said, you know what is interesting to me is I think people, especially those who study theology and consider themselves theologians, I think that they think that their purpose is to know everything that they possibly can know about God and just regurgitate that back to other people. Like, this is what I know about God and this is what you need to know. And he says to me, do you not think that's the purpose of a theologian? I was like, no, because when I study scripture, what I know about God is his ways are higher than my ways and his thoughts are, higher than my thoughts. So I'm never going to know anything about, I'm never going to know even a fraction of who God is on this side of eternity. I said, so I think the role of a theologian is, within parameters and context, is to inspire wonder of who God is based off of what they know, to inspire others to go and discover God for themselves.
Spoken like a true pastor.
I was like, dude, in the moment, I was just like, I've never said that out loud before, but I truly believe that. And I'm rolling with that from now on. Like, I'm never going to walk around with I'm the know-it-all pastor because I have a theology degree. I'm going to be walking around now for the rest of my life of like, can I just introduce you to who God is and see if that even, piques your interest at all? And I say all that because, as somebody who lives in a creative world like you do all the time, like, we're given the freedoms, you're given the freedoms, I take advantage of the freedoms that you have of being able to inspire wonder from God's word in the metaverse and what we can build and what can be created. So
that's well put, man. I mean, that's the heart of a pastor, man. Like that right there is just the difference between, we say it's like the head knowledge it doesn't get you anywhere. And, it's like you could just look at the Pharisees compared to Jesus and then ultimately his disciples, where, you even if you go into the book of Acts and you see, okay, like Jesus is gone and these guys are doing everything that Jesus did, in terms of the signs and the wonders and the miracles, and the people that, that are following him and, following Christ because of them. And like, they continue to just be people that it's just like, it's not the experts in the law. Just case in point, again, we could just fresh because we were going over it, but like Stephen, who is just like such an amazing story. And obviously it's just, such a powerful story. Right. And he goes through this amazing defense where he not only calls out, he not only defends himself adequately, but he calls out the people that are accusing him, right? Absolutely in the vein of Jesus. But like, if you go back to where he started, right? Like, where did Stephen start to do signs and wonders? He was waiting tables. Like that, they raised him up. Now, obviously he had some credibility to even get to that point. But the apostles were like, we're doing all this stuff and we need somebody to wait tables. And Stephen's like, yeah, cool, I'll do that. Like, it wasn't necessarily just like saying like, I want to have all the head knowledge. He's just like, how can I help? And if it's waiting tables, great. If it's healing people from blindness, I'll do that too. And if it's dying for Christ, I'll do that. And so,
yeah. So that was our first really rabbit trail. So, all that being said, I'm married and got 2 kids, the third one on the way, and 2 dogs.
Yeah. Congrats, brother.
So that's Stuart outside of the metaverse.
Yeah, right on. Okay. And soon you'll be a PDC darts fan as well.
That's right.
I'm going to convert you.
And, just people never really ask questions, because if people ask questions, they would ask questions like, Stuart, do you like to play darts? Yes, I do. Every day for the past 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
Lasso references. All right, so we got a little bit of who we are outside of the metaverse. So let's talk about what was your introduction into just doing like metaverse ministry? How did you get into that? Was it uh, like a testing of the waters thing, or did you just dive in head first and there you go?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was working at the church that I had been at, and everything was great. I mean, it was just love everybody there. Still do. We're still very close, but which happened to be at a conference, an online digital conference, and met up with Pastor Jason from Cornerstone. And at first, I heard about what he was doing. I knew I had the skill set, and all I told him was, he said, "Hey, I'm looking for a pastor who knows how to make video games." I'm like, "Well, good luck." I mean, that describes me exactly, but good luck. I'm not going anywhere. I love where I'm at. But I said, I said, but look, if I can help, I love to do this stuff. I have always got like 3 Unity projects open on my computer at any given time. I'm like, I'm always doing something in it. And so if there's a way I can help and help you guys advance the gospel in that space that I know very little about, I'm happy to do that. And I kind of started the conversation going. It also, and I started to hear that voice. It wasn't quite as vocal as the one that you got, but it still was. There was a nagging there. There was a bit of a tug, and it made me start to think. Talked to my wife about it, looking for some confirmation there, and she said, "Man, that really does sound like like an amazing thing that like really lines up with what you absolutely love to do." And so then I talked to my lead pastor, and it was funny because it's like, I went to him and I said, "Hey, look, here's this happened." This is really like a couple months after even Jason had even kind of brought it up, and he only kind of threw it out there. It wasn't anything official, but I knew it could be something if I really wanted to pursue it. And so I went to my lead pastor and I told him, "Hey, this happened. We had this conversation, and initially I wasn't really thinking about it, and I got to tell you, like, it hasn't gone away, and I'm really kind of thinking about it, and I don't know what to do with that. And you're the person that I look to for spiritual advice, and as a friend, he's a good friend, and all that." But it was kind of a weird conversation because I thought about it and I was thinking, I have my law firm. If one of my attorneys came to me and said, "Hey, the law firm down the road, they're looking for an attorney, and I'm kind of thinking about it. I'm kind of thinking about taking that job, or applying for it or whatever." I'm thinking to myself, and I think my response probably would be, "Well, I hope you get it because you don't work here anymore." Like, if you don't, like it, but like, because it's just like, well, yeah. What is that? But ministry is different. It's just different. And also my lead pastor is a far more godly man than I apparently am, because what he said was, he said, "Hey, look," he said, and this was beautiful. He said, I hope it's not it, but if it is, how can we stand in God's way?" And he walked with me and my wife and Pastor Jason through months of discussions and prayer. And it just became more and more clear that God was leading in that direction. So that was that was really how all that went down. And just, shining examples in both sides. And, that I've had 2 ministry jobs. That's it. And both of those pastors have been just so wise, such good, godly men, so selfless and kingdom first. And I couldn't be more blessed to still have both of them in my life and to serve under them. And so, God's really blessed me in that way. It was not what I thought it was. When I came in first time, I really first time I popped the headset on and I actually came in that role, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm ready to pastor these people. In my mind, it was gamers. Like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, these are my people. Like, I know how to talk to them. We're going to hit it off. We're going to talk about game development and game design and what are they playing and and all that. And I get into alt space, and like my first like 8 conversations, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What games you play? And they're like, this. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't. And over and over and over again. And I really relatively quickly realized, while yes, there are plenty of gamers in the VR space, it's not nearly as much as I thought, and not nearly as much in the places where we're doing ministry. The gamers are playing their games; they're not totally in those social apps. So that was like very quickly a big shift in what I thought I was getting into.
It's funny. I think just even the last bit of it, I think is going to be its weight in gold for anybody who listens to this, that's thinking about getting into, VR ministry, metaverse ministry. Of it might not be what you're thinking it is, because for me, so my introduction to this was, I saw an article on VR ministry pre-COVID, and I was just like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of in my life. I was so against it, 100% against it. And I was against digital ministry as a whole. Like the idea that my version of church can be sitting at home on a computer, and I can get the same thing from that as somebody who is attending in person. I was like, it just doesn't happen. And then of course COVID happens and reshaped my thinking, all besides for VR ministry. I was like, dude, 100% sold on digital, not VR. I still think that that's dumb. So I got over here to Lakeland mid-pandemic, and quickly found out that my senior pastor was already investigating the idea of virtual reality ministry. Like, what would it look like to launch a church in VR? And I was like, that's fun. You guys go ahead and do that. Lo and behold, I ended up being tapped as the guy who was going to lead Lakeland into VR. That's awesome. And so where you're the type of person, Goose, where you're like, I love video games. I love to dissect and build video games, play around with Unity and whatnot. They're asking me to step into this. And I'm just like, I'm pretty sure my last video game console was like an Xbox 360. And I only bought that really to play Madden, where I played on like rookie level all the time because I wasn't good at video games, and to play Blu-ray because Blu-ray was big at the time. And I haven't played video games since. So I'm like, dude, I'm going to just drown in this world and in this ministry. But the guy that partnered with us in the process, our next gen pastor, our next gen director, he's all into video games. He already had a headset. So it was like a team effort of like, let's send in Stuart and Jason to do this with Jason's experience. So Jason, our next gen director, he built everything out. So it was just like, he knew how to get things set up in alt space, the platform we're on. We'll talk about other platforms later in this in our overall podcast, but he knew how to get it set up. He understood like the coding and all that kind of stuff that went along with it. And he's trying to explain it to me one time, and I'm just like, cool. Just show me pictures, put it down on a playbook or something, and I'll just follow from that point. Like, let me do it a couple of times and I'll figure it out. But I'll say my experience going into it is probably the same as yours. Like, it threw me off because I was expecting to talk with people that were, I don't know, half my age. I was expecting like 15 to like 25-year-olds. And I'm sitting here as like a 33-year-old dude with 1+ kid on the way at the time. And I'm pretty sure when we launched Lakeland VR, we had, I would say the majority of the people in that room were twice my age.
Yeah.
And they don't play video games. They're there for the social aspect of it. And I was just like, this just got interesting because this is not what I was expecting at all. And what I also found out with the people in there, where they were quick to want to connect even outside of VR. So there's a couple of people that I connected with from when we launched back in March 2021 that I'm friends with on Facebook. And if I'm down and out sick or something, they reach out and asking how I'm doing. I'm like, who would have ever thought that would have came from a VR type ministry? Like you expect that from in real life kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all that to say, like, it wasn't anything that was ever on the horizon for me or ever on the radar. I was like, dude, I'm never gonna do VR ministry. And now, like, getting close to being 2 years into this, dude, I'm having so much fun with it. And I really do believe, we've said it already before, like I feel like we're just barely scratching the surface. Somebody else is going to come in and do this way better than me, and that's fine. I don't care. But there's just a lot of fun things that I'm seeing, and because it's a constant learning process, like a curveball always being thrown. What's fun for me is, as a person who is a futuristic thinker and like a dreamer per se, it allows me to live in that. Well, it allows me to drive that lane all the time, because here's a perfect example. So, and again, we'll eventually unpack all of what we do at Cornerstone and Lakeland VR. But I just this past week hosted an event that was completely separate to Lakeland VR. Did it with the permission of my senior pastor and executive pastor, just because I was curious. But I hosted an event, and I didn't want it attached to the church. I even thought about changing my name. I wasn't sure that I wanted it attached to Stunami, the pastor, but I hosted an event in alt space that was, the title on the main event board was simply "What's Wrong with the Church?"
Oh, wow.
And and people came into the environment, and I told them, it's like, here, let me be completely transparent and honest with you. I'm a pastor of a church. I lead a campus here in alt space. And I'm not here to defend the church. Literally, I am opening up the floor to all of you to tell me what is wrong with the church today.
Wow.
And I'm not going to tell you if you're right. I'm not going to tell you if you're wrong. I'm not going to tell you that your experience with the church is you just being a baby and you need to get over it, or if it's legitimate. It's just, this is a place for you to vent and for you to speak your mind as to what's wrong with the church today. And because I knew going into that, I was probably going to get a couple of different groups of people, and I knew one of those groups was going to be Christians that were going to come in.
Yeah.
And I knew that they were going to come in and they were going to want to go in defense of the church. And they were wanting to go in defense of Jesus. And I said, the only people that I'm going to shut down in this event are the ones who try to defend the church and defend Jesus. I'm giving the platform to the atheists, the agnostics, the other religious believers. I'm giving you the platform to tell me why, what's wrong with the church? Why do you hate the church? How did the church hurt you? And with nobody combating against you.
How'd that go?
Dude, so fruitful. And it was very, it lacked confrontation.
That's
I
good.
loved it.
Yeah, lacking
like
lacking confrontation is not something we can usually say at the end of any of our church services in the metaverse. That's rare.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's pretty
but
good.
I did at the end of it. Yeah, I did at the end of it, though. I told everybody, I'm like, look, I think your guys' opinions are valid. At some point in time, you were able to develop an opinion of the church that this is what's wrong. Now, it may just be your opinion or a misinterpreted or misguided opinion, but nonetheless, this is the realm that you live in, and this is what you believe about the church. And I said, so here's the invitation. We have a Discord channel. Come join us over at Lakeland VR. Again, I'm a pastor of a church here in VR. Like, now you know, I'm not here to tell you, I'm not here to be a Bible thumper and press Jesus on you. I'm here to listen to you, and I'm going to present Jesus in the process. And I was just like, I don't necessarily know that you can do that in real life, but in VR, like if I wanted to right now, when you and I get done with this, if I just wanted to go launch an event that says, tell me why you're ticked off at the church, I can do that. And people are going to come in and they're going to tell me. And it's going to put me more in the realm of the people that Jesus told me to reach out to than what I would probably normally do. And I think that's what's fun, is just the creative elements of like, there's new ways for me to reach the unreached right now. There's new ways of me giving them a voice that brings them, or I mean brings them to me, but it's me going to them. But it's just so neat how it all plays out.
That's a great point, and the evangelistic opportunities and the evangelism side of ministry in the metaverse is just, I mean, like, it's developed and it's successful and it's fruitful, and like that side of it, the evangelistic opportunities, it's really hard for the physical church to beat that, because like literally 24/7, someone with an evangelistic heart could pop a headset on and within literally minutes have somebody that's willing to listen to them. They might not, no, that might not come of it. Something might not come of it, but you absolutely could go deliver the gospel to somebody right now. You and I can pop headsets on right now, and like we can set a timer. I guarantee within 3 minutes, one of us could find somebody that'd be like, all right, I'll listen to what you got to say. So for anybody with an evangelistic heart, this space is just like, it is unlike anything that the world has ever seen. I'm finding, and I know we're going to have more podcasts that dive into this a little bit more. What we're finding is that on the more developed side, and it's not that we can't do it. I mean, I know you guys, and certainly on Cornerstone side, we've got some really developed marks of the church, but sorting out exactly what that looks like, you know, from like a long-term discipleship standpoint, and a disciples creating disciples, and like that, you know, that's where I've been seeing, like, you know, anyway, my point is, like, we've got advantages and some disadvantages, and one of the massive advantages is what you're seeing there, is like, to be able to just spin something up and get people into it like quickly, cheaply, efficiently, all of that. Physical church cannot compete with that. I mean, just you cannot do it. So, you know, that's definitely a side of the metaverse ministry that that is just I love that part of it.
Yeah. So so all that being said, we'll kind of shut this one down, this episode, the first one of our Metaverse Church podcast. But I think like that's my excitement for this podcast moving forward, is I think as you and I continue to be in this environment, we're going to see new wins that we didn't expect were going to pop up. Stuff that we intentionally set out to do is going to fail, and we're going to get a victory out of it, because that's what I honestly believe that's what Metaverse awards us. It awards those who are just willing to do something, and you get a victory that you were unintentionally looking for. And so I'm just excited for, you know, what we're learning, what we're sharing, and how that's going to end up being fruitful for other people, for our listeners, moving forward. Just because I said this to somebody, I don't remember who it was, but I told them, it was like, every church needs a metaverse, a VR pastor. Every church does. And the only reason why is for exactly what we just talked about. The upfront cost going into it is almost non-existent for the opportunity of reaching more people than ever before. The famous line that I have, that I've said multiple times to people now, is what I learned quickly was I became an international missionary without ever having to leave my basement at this point.
Amen.
I get to spread seeds of hope all over the world now. And that's the truth. There are people from Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, China, Indonesia, Brazil, India, Canada, UK that have all popped into our events that I've gotten to have conversations with that never would have happened if I was never invited into the metaverse. So I'm just excited what we get out of this.
What's funny about that is that for me, I love the international aspect of it, but for me, the thing that has made the biggest mark is absolutely 100% missionary, right? And in fact, my position is considered a missionary position with Cornerstone, which I love because I report to the mission board as, in addition to Pastor Jason. But what I was struck by was how much of a missionary, in addition to all those things, are how much of a missionary we are to the United States, to people in the U.S. Because I have had so many conversations with people and kids, especially, who are completely biblically illiterate. And what I mean is, like, I have had conversations with kids where I've started off with it. You know, they're like, well, what are you doing here? We're like, well, we do church and we talk about Jesus, like the Bible. And they're like, no, I don't know about the Bible. And when somebody says that to me, I'm thinking like, okay, they haven't read the Bible, but they know what it's about, right? No. I still remember the conversation with a kid, and I'm like, well, you know that the Bible exists, right? You know what's in it, like the story, of Jesus and he's like, no, I don't know. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to figure out, all right, where's my starting point with this kid? I literally had to go back to Adam and Eve and walk him through the fall and, creation and the fall. And I know I only had like 3 minutes with this kid, but I mean, finally I was like, you ever see a cross outside of a church? He's like, yes. I'm like, okay, wonderful. Like, do you know why that cross is there? He's like, no idea. I'm like, wow. So my point is, it's like I think we take for granted walking around that, like, any given person that you might just kind of like flag down and ask questions about the Bible, about Jesus, that they have a certain level of knowledge. And what I am finding almost universally is that that knowledge is much lower than I thought. And in that way, we're just a missionary to our very own country at this point, in addition to all those places. And so I love all of it. I love that it is just a whole new it's like a whole new world. So
we're gonna go ahead and shut this one down for this first episode. Goose, dude, I'm excited to do this with you, man.
Same, man. This is gonna be a blast.
On behalf of Goose and myself, thank you for watching, listening to the very first episode of the Metaverse Church podcast. And if you're trying to convince your senior pastor, executive pastor that you need to have a Metaverse church, just shoot them this in a quick email and just be like, hey, I listened to these guys. Check this out. I think this is a dumb idea, but maybe we should give it a shot. We'll come in and back you up in your corner. So all that being said, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Peace. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of the Metaverse Church podcast. Hopefully it was a blessing and beneficial to you. If you have any questions for myself or for Goose, please email us at metaversechurchpodcast@gmail.com. If you're even leading a church in the metaverse, we would love to get to know you and maybe even invite you onto the show to share with us what it is that you guys are doing in the metaverse. So please be sure to reach out to us through that same email as well. Something that you can do to help us if we're helping you: subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, leave a rating and a review. Those kinds of next steps help get this out to more people to help them as well. If you're interested in learning more about what we do at Lakeland VR or what's going on at Cornerstones, please reach out to us. We'll get you an invite to our VR events so you can get more hands-on experience with what we have going on. We'll be back with you next week with a brand new episode. So until then, be blessed.